In this week's news, the world's refugee numbers at all-time high. America mourns after Charleston shooting. And millions impacted by book distribution.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Last weekend's World Refugee Day prompted a number of Australian church organisations to highlight refugee issues and call for compassion. The Churches of Christ produced this video emphasising the biblical responsibility to care for the stranger.
Exodus 23 verse 9 says, "Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be a foreigner, because you were foreigners in Egypt."
Media attention has not been on church actions and statements, however, with a federal Senate inquiry hearing claims of abuse in Australia's offshore migration detention centres and the methods being used in the government's Turn Back the Boats policy coming under scrutiny. Meanwhile, the United Nations reports that there is now a record high of 60 million people around the world who are displaced by war and persecution, a situation that church-based agencies are struggling to manage.
There are more displaced people in the world today than at any time since World War II, and this presents a huge challenge for aid organisations such as ADRA Australia. We need to be able to get in there and help these people and address the underlying issues that is creating these conflicts, these wars that are sending people outside of their own countries.
A pastoral letter on same-sex marriage from Australia's Catholic bishops has sparked an outcry from some who see the document as homophobic and damaging. The document, titled "Don't Mess with Marriage," highlights the unique place of heterosexual unions in culture, religion and biology, and emphasises a child's right to a mother and father, wherever possible. But the letter, which was published online as well as being distributed to Catholic churches and schools, has been described by critics as ignorant propaganda, which is humiliating and degrading. Sydney Archbishop Anthony Fisher has responded to the criticisms, reiterating the Church's rejection of hate and bigotry. Australian of the Year Rosie Batty has spoken out publicly on the links between family violence and alcohol and called for governments to take more effective action on the issue. Ms Batty's 11-year-old son Luke was killed by his father last year, a tragedy leading to Ms Batty becoming a campaigner against domestic violence. Launching a new report by the Foundation for Alcohol Research and Education, Ms Batty said that too often the link between alcohol and violence is ignored.
Alcohol is involved in up to 65% of family violence incidents reported to police.
The Adventist Church is among the community groups that have expressed support for more targeted and effective action on the issue.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church has for long taught an alcohol-free lifestyle, and mainly for health reasons. But we have seen over the many decades that alcohol has an effect on the social, on the women, on the children, and it can have serious social, psychological effect on the people who are affected.
A church community is in deep mourning and a nation is in shock after the shooting deaths of 9 people at a Bible study in Charleston, South Carolina. The attack, which appears to be racially motivated, has reinvigorated national debates about gun control, police violence against African American suspects, and the use of the Confederate flag. But survivors of those who perished in the massacre surprised many observers by expressing their forgiveness towards the gunmen.
Daughter of 70-year-old Ethel Lance.
You took something very precious away from me. I will never talk to her ever again. I will never be able to hold her again. But I forgive you.
A number of media commentators have noted that America's black churches have long been targets for race-based violence. The political situation in the East African country of Burundi appears to be unravelling in the lead-up to a controversial presidential election. According to Adventist Review, more than 100,000 refugees have fled into neighbouring countries to escape the violence and unrest, sparking a humanitarian crisis. The Adventist Development and Relief Agency, or ADRA, is one of the Christian organisations working in the region, together with the United Nations and government agencies. ADRA has provided accommodation and coordinated disease prevention campaigns, and has also distributed food and other emergency supplies to nearly 55,000 people. Christian groups are among the ethnic and religious minorities struggling to find a place in the Southeast Asian country of Myanmar as it moves towards democracy. According to Open Doors USA, ceasefire agreements between the military-dominated government and 16 rebel groups have failed, and a number of armed civil conflicts have continued. Christians from the Chin, Kachin and Karen minority groups say they are being targeted for their faith by the Myanmar military, which has come to associate all Christians with rebel activity. Homes, churches and whole villages have been destroyed, leading to a situation where hundreds of thousands of Christians and other minorities are internally displaced in Myanmar or have escaped into neighbouring countries. Open Doors is calling for prayer. The latest encyclical or official letter from Pope Francis on environmental issues has been controversial even before it was released by the Vatican. In the 180-page encyclical, the Pope returned repeatedly to the words of his namesake, Francis of Assisi, who considered everything in creation as a sister or brother and deserving of special care. Pope Francis used biblical examples to underline that humans themselves are part of nature and that environmental destruction has a disproportionate impact on the world's poor. But his embrace of climate change science has prompted criticism from both inside and outside the Church, with some opponents saying the Pope is not infallible in the scientific arena. In South America, local Adventists are waging spiritual warfare in their own way, distributing books on health and Christian living to 21 million people in just one day. Thousands of church members in 8 countries participated, hitting the streets in various cities with smiles and free giveaways. These kids in Brazil received a warm reception at their local TV station and even got to visit the studio. Thousands of people responded positively to the Health Book Blitz and attended follow-up seminars or accepted the invitation to begin Bible studies. It's not every day that a 1,000-year-old musical style hits the top of the charts, but that's exactly what's happened. The latest album of Gregorian chants by the Benedictine monks of Norcia in Italy debuted at #1 on Billboard's classical music chart. It does help a bit that the song leader is a trained musician and that the average age of the monks is 33. And that's the news for this week. For in-depth exploration of politics and current affairs issues, tune in for the full half hour of Record in Focus, which plays weekly on Hope Channel, the Australian Christian Channel and Digital 44 in Adelaide. You can also see the program online at record.net.au. Thanks for your company. I'll see you next time on InFocus Christian News.